And we are back with another episode of How About Them Celtics Talking C's with Bobby Kravitsky of SI Media Group. Bobby, how you doing?
Doing fantastic and got my sleep on the back end. So, we're just surviving these 10 o'clock tip-offs, even with overtime.
It's weird because as we're recording this, Warriors played last night. You guys will see this a little bit before they play the Kings, and it's back-to-back 10-10. Then they go to 3:30 against the Clippers on the
But what a
West Coast, which
blessing
is
that
like,
is to have early tips from the
yeah,
West Coast.
This is like a blessing of a West Coast trip. Like,
yeah.
you only have these two late games, then it's like you said, 3:30, and Christmas is at 5:30. So it's just like regular walk in the park for these two special afternoon games. We lucked out,
Weird.
to be honest.
I'm not complaining. It just throws me off schedule-wise because I spend the whole night waiting like, 7:30, and then we got 3 more hours, and then 3:30, it's like right in the middle of the day. But unfortunately, Celtics started off the West Coast trip with a loss to the Warriors. They were up by as many as 17 points. Sam and I talked about it on the channel last night. Bobby, what are your instant reactions from that loss?
I think that in the fourth quarter, they played not to lose, and it was evident they were less aggressive. They didn't push the pace as much. And I think what's not getting discussed is how bad they were defensively. They only got something like 2 stops within the final 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. Their pick and roll defense deteriorated. They lost track of Curry a few times. They let Klay Thompson get free for a 3. And I know it was from distance. It wasn't right at the line, but he's Klay Thompson. He'll take and make those. And so it just seemed like, and we can talk about luck and everything else under the sun with this game, but it just seemed to me like the fundamentals that we praised them for on the homestand, that Jaylen Brown said, this is what defines Celtics basketball. They abandoned those when it mattered most.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that like really set a lot of people off, even though a lot of people don't know how to voice it correctly, including myself at times. But we did talk about the defense last night because it was a glaring issue. It's the same thing that happened against the Pacers, except it kind of happened quicker against the Pacers. Pacers got right back into the game in the third quarter. Last night, they at least won the third quarter. They haven't been playing well in the third quarter at all. They won, I think they won by what? 9 points or something in the third in Chase Center. But then they lose by double digits in the fourth quarter, have it go to overtime, they lose. And it's largely in part because they can't play defense. If you go back and you just watch all of the offensive possessions from the Celtics, they threw haymaker after haymaker, but they didn't do any blocking. They didn't block the blows the Warriors threw back at them. And it was just 3 and then 3 the other way and 3 the other way. And they got nowhere. They actually played really solid offense until the last minute of the game. Of course, there was the possession where they missed 5 shots. And I mean, for that, you can be like, Derek White 3, good look. Tatum 3, Chuck, another Derek White 3, good look. Jalen missed layup, good look. Horford tip, not a bad look. Like 4 of the 5 looks were pretty like acceptable. You can't complain too much about the offense, and I think that's a positive because we're so used to complaining about the threes, and they did miss a franchise record in threes. But the real area of issue is the defensive end because they just didn't tighten up enough. They let the same thing happen to them. Horford had a rough shooting night, but on the defensive end, he was consistently targeted, which is fine. It's going to happen. But at the same time, you have a big guy out there. Why even put him out there if the offensive rebounds are being given up because he's too busy having to guard the perimeter because they're targeting him? It really doesn't prove why he should be out there because he's not being utilized the way he typically would be, if that makes any sense. I don't know. I talked a lot.
I don't know. See, I don't blame necessarily Al Horford, and I'm not saying you were, but I feel like rather than saying he shouldn't be out there, it should be, why aren't the other guys getting the rebounds? Like, what are we doing? We're just going to stand there? Like on that last possession of the game, I think the one you're referencing, or maybe it was overtime.
There's a couple of them.
When the Warriors got the rebound and Steph Curry made the crazy shot, like, you look at the replay, Al Horford had to guard Steph Curry driving to the rim, and had an argument with
did a good job, by the way.
Loyal listener, he did, of the show on Twitter. He was like, it's Al, he let up the rebound. Al was guarding Steph on the drive, and then Derek White, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown proceeded to watch the rebound fall to somebody else. Like, that's not on Al. Al guarded the shot. It's not easy to get a rebound after you just had to guard a drive. And
do you have the clip?
Yeah, I can pull up the clip. Let me find
I'm just curious if the ball hit the ground, because when I watched this back this morning, it looked like it was Tatum's rebound. And we can talk about the ankle thing, but if his ankle was bugging him, that's probably why he didn't have the same burst to the ball as it hit the rim. but it kind of sucked. I mean, you never want to see an offensive rebound decide the game like it did.
Yeah, and
I
then
got
just
it right here.
another point I want to make, because these things go hand in hand, or I'll wait until after the clip here since it's pulled up.
You can talk through the clip. I'll mute
Yeah.
it. But yeah, so Steph drives, gets
Yep.
to
Good defense.
spin,
That
great
is
defense by
absolutely good
Al.
defense.
And then, I mean, I guess you credit partially Kuminga for
Trace
just
Jackson
making a good
Davis,
play
he
on the
was
ball.
excellent last night.
Yeah, Trace Jackson and Kuminga just got there
And look,
first,
there's no
unfortunately.
body on him because Derek White is trailing from behind Curry.
Yeah.
If anything, this is for as good of a game as he had. Like, there's no reason for Derek White to leave his feet there. Like that, like if you want to
Well, he's
really look
going
at it,
he had a few of those blocks from behind, and the way Curry shoots the ball, he doesn't have a chance at it, which is unfortunate because you're all in on that if you're Derek White. So you can't hedge your bets and get back to make any sort of contact with Trace Jackson Davis.
Watch this one too. So Tatum goes to block out Kuminga because Kuminga makes a good play on it. These two are containing Curry. Drew Holiday and Jaylen Brown play ball watch. They play. Let's see what's happening.
Drew Holiday doesn't want to completely abandon Chris Paul. So he's not the call is not for him to go all in to stop the roller or to contain Steph Curry there. So he kind of did his job in playing a zone and not leaving Chris Paul open for a kick out three. It's just unfortunate. And maybe at that point, based on where Holiday is on the floor, he could have rotated over to box out Trace Jackson Davis, but he doesn't have position and there's minimal time to close. So that's criticizing someone for not making that extra effort to go beyond their responsibilities.
It was just tough. It was a tough break. Trace Jackson Davis, I mean, give him his credit. He did a great job of getting in there all night. And at that point, there was just no body on him because Steph drew two, because that's what star players do. But like y'all said, defensively, it was just like the Celtics. The frustrating part was you saw the moments where they could defend successfully throughout the game, like through the first half and et cetera. And then you saw the big possession where Peyton Pritchard denied the ball to Clay and Steph. You saw the big block by Al Horford where he stuffed him at the rim and passed the ball in bounds. You saw good possessions, where Jaylen Brown would step up and have a big play. But when it mattered, it just felt like it didn't even feel like they played terrible defense. It just felt like they were a half second to a second too late on every contest. And unfortunately, that's all that matters when you're playing Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And so that's just not good enough. Like you said, it felt like they were so hesitant, might not be the correct word, but they were playing with the idea of we're winning, let's not lose the game. And I think because of that, they were like, I don't want to close out completely in case he drives. And so then they're just a second late. And then, I mean, we looked at the play-by-play last night. They scored on 5 straight possessions and 4 of them were threes. You're not going to win many games when you allow that many stops in the last 7 minutes of the game. And so it was frustrating to watch them to just collapse like that on the defensive end.
Yeah, it all went hand in hand where their struggles to score offensively. Sam, you referenced it, a franchise record, 41 misses from beyond the arc. I mean, Sam Hauser went 0 for 6 from 3 last night, 0 for 7 from the field. And when you can't buy a basket, even when you're getting good looks, now the other team gets to live in transition. And so that fueled the Warriors having an 18-4 advantage in the paint in the final frame. And all of a sudden, they used that to get in rhythm from beyond the arc. Now they're running. They're seeing the ball go through the hoop. Everyone's getting involved in the offense. And sure enough, Clay starts hitting threes. Steph had 13 points going into the fourth quarter. He put 20 on them in the last 17 minutes of the game. And it was just a disaster. Not to mention, it's harder to push the pace, especially on the road when they have momentum in a building that gets that loud. When you have to take the ball out, it feels like every single time in the fourth quarter, almost quite literally. And so it all just kind of spiraled against them, where the lack of success offensively made it that much harder to stop what, I don't care what they're doing overall for the season, is still a very dangerous offense.
It's true. And I think that's a good point. Having to take the ball out really hinders your ability to get out in transition, a place where they've played pretty well this season when they've done it. But it just sucked to watch them in overtime not be able to score. It's even worse because despite not being able to play in transition, they still played decent offense in the fourth quarter. They just couldn't capitalize and string stops together. If they get 2 extra stops, they win even one, I guess, technically, because you went to overtime. But if you get 2 stops there, it's a comfortable win. They did everything right offensively. They made a lot of big shots. They had the one possession where they missed 5 straight. But besides that, like, and of course, the last shot of regulation, there's not too much offensively for me to complain about, and I love to complain. I didn't have a problem with the 41 threes they missed, only the ones that were bad. They created a lot of good threes by swinging the ball. They played out of the low post. When they were actually forced to slow down the game, Tatum did a good job. They went at Curry, who had 5 fouls. They posted him up. He drew a double every single time. Then the ball was kicked out to the close guy, and it was swung all the way around to the weak side a couple times, and they got great looks out of it. It's unfortunate that they didn't fall. The missed open threes are the things I am least upset about after yesterday, which is very rare.
I mean, they missed so many layups. Just
That
so many layups at huge times in the game. I mean, Al Horford had that tip in that just wasn't even close. That ended up going out of bounds. Jaylen Brown had a rough miss at the end of regulation. Jason Tatum had a rough miss. I think it was at the end of overtime. Like,
OT.
they just couldn't make a shot at the end of the game. It's like they were in their own heads at the rim. And Joe Mazzulla's talked about it before. He's like, oh, you talk about threes, talk about the layups. And like Sam said, I thought the threes were good. I thought almost all the threes were good. Derek White took 18 threes in that game. That's insane. He took 18 threes,
Shades
but no
of
one
Grant.
noticed. Exactly. No one noticed, though, because they were all good threes, and that's what matters. Al Horford took 10 threes. She shot 3 of 10, but they were all good threes. Like, it's tough to complain, at least in my opinion, about the shot selection, like you just said, because they were all within the flow of the offense, at least for the most part. The exception being Jason Tatum, who decided to shoot a lot of not paint shots. He shot 3 of 6 in the paint last night, and he shot 2 of 11 from not in the paint last night, because technically that shot at the end of the regulation was a 2. I was writing about it last night. It was technically a 2-pointer. His foot was on the
That's
line,
why.
but it was effectively a 3. But he was awful, like truly awful in that game shooting wise. He had, I think, 8 and 7 rebounds, assists, so like he made some impact elsewhere, but he killed him with the shot selection he had in that game. Like, I watched all the shots last night when I was writing. Every single 3 in long range shot or non-paint shot, we'll call it, outside of one, was either a pull-up, a contested shot, or both. Like, none of them were within the flow of the offense. 0 of his shots. And while I think a lot of that blame goes to Tatum, I also feel like it's important to acknowledge that, like, can we work to get him some better shots? Like, can the Celtics offense try a little bit harder to get your best player involved in the flow of the offense? So I think both those things are important.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Tatum pull-up threes. He's shooting like 30% or something on them for the season. It just, it doesn't work for him. It doesn't play to his strengths. It's not good team offense for sure. So I don't like it whatsoever. And to your point earlier, Sam, it's why they probably could have stood to have called a timeout at the last possession regulation there, because Tatum didn't have it going. And with the ankle injury, he wasn't attacking downhill. And it's just too complicated of a situation. And I don't think it's productive to let it play out and say, hey, get the ball to Jaylen Brown, for example. I don't think anything good comes from stopping on the fly to make sure that happens and telegraphing what you're doing to the defense. So I wonder if Joe Mazzulla, he said publicly that he didn't regret his decision. I wonder if he second guesses it, afterwards and privately at least, and he would have gone a different route there.
See, it's funny, like the timeout thing, and Jack, you'll understand this. It reminds me of when you play blackjack and you have certain things you can do when you have to make a decision. You can double down if you have, let's say, a 10 against an 8, where if you don't get the double, you might lose. It's a risk, it's a gamble, but I think if you stay true to whatever your strategy is, you can't really get mad at it. That's how I feel about the timeouts. I don't hate that they didn't call a timeout. I just think it's less about Joe and it's more about his trust in Tatum. Like, maybe he has too much faith in him to make the correct decision in that moment of the game, which
I just think it changes when he has, because of the ankle injury and the impact it had on how Tatum played, that in that specific context, I think it changes.
And that's fair. And you did mention the 30% earlier. So I saw this tweet today. Somebody sent it to me. This is from Jason Timpf. Jason Tatum's obsession with pull-up threes is one of the strangest superstar trends in the league. There are 8 players in the league who take at least 5 of them a game. They all shoot 35% or better on them, except for Tatum, who is below 30%. He was below 30% last year, too. So Tatum
he's not good at
dribble
it.
3 bad.
Well, I wrote about this summer, I think, or late in the playoffs. Like, he used to be good at them. Like,
It's a fact.
so his percentages effectively went from catch and shoot wasn't great, or there was some percentage where like they were like cross matched, like a graph. Like Tatum's pull up percentage used to be really good, and now it's really bad. But he's taking more pull ups, and his catch and shoot used to be really good, then it was bad, then it's good again. But then like like his shot profile has been so weird over the course of his career, and the way I always phrase it is I'm okay with him taking some pull-ups throughout the course of a game. My thought process is he's Jason Tatum. We know he can make them. He is a talented player. As long as they're sprinkled in and they're not like in the worst moments, like I'm fine with him taking a couple of them. It's whatever. Like it's fine. He took it in the worst moment. Like that is like the one thing. Like the one thing you should not do is take it in the moment where you need a bucket, and that's exactly what he did. And it's not even like he took a pull up three like the one he took against Philly, where they drew up the play. He got downhill, then he stepped back and he had one.
Yeah.
He had no space. He had Jonathan Kuminga all over him. And what's worse, I'm going to pull up the clip so I can show you my thought process here. What's worse, he had a lane. He could have gotten by Jonathan Kuminga.
Don't show me this.
Like, this is not like, maybe I'm crazy and maybe Jonathan Kuminga would have recovered or kept going in time. But to me, on this play, it looks like he could have kept driving right and drove into Steph Curry, who, by the way, played the entire fourth quarter in overtime with 5 fouls. And they just, like, if anything, I think they focused too much on trying to attack Curry that they got out of the rest of their offense. Like,
and that's burned them on multiple occasions this season.
Like, you're telling me at this moment, you can't burst of speed downhill. Look at this.
Maybe it's the ankle, but
don't you think that ends in a kick out to Horford?
That's what I'm saying. So I wrote this in the article. I'm saying I wrote about Tatum's final shot for Celtics blog today. Tatum decided to take the shot. Not only that, you had Jaylen Brown here, who was playing great all night. And I'm not saying he's open, but like that's another option. You had Derek White, who'd been red hot all night. And you get to this point. Ready? Watch him beat Kuminga. Look at Al Horford. I don't care that he's 3 for 10. He is wide, butt naked open. You make the pass. Every time. Like, and this is something
I do think that Trace Jackson Davis recovers to that, though. I think that's a contested 3 at this point in the play.
Sure. But it would have been better than this.
Yes.
New cover photo just dropped.
Oh my God.
It's
that's
terrible. It is. It's awful, man. Even the he's Jason Tatum thing doesn't matter to me anymore. Like, if he's shot 30% on it, sub 30% this year, sub 30% last year, it's like, well, if he's Jason Tatum, maybe it's a bad shot for him. Like these other high volume 3-point guys, the superstars, Curry's an unfair comparison, but he's just somebody that comes to mind because he can create his own shot. He gets a lot of looks from running around in catch and shoot. And Tatum, to his credit, has been good at catch and shoot. So if you want to be like, hey, Missoula, your fault, be like, do more Tatum catch and shoot plays because he had one he made yesterday, and it might have been the only catch and shoot 3 he took all game.
It was.
Even the one he didn't take a dribble.
I can't answer your question. It was.
What is it?
It was his only catch. It's the one where Derek White got the rebound, Al Horford got it, and then kicked it to Tatum at the top of the key in transition. It was the only catch and shoot 3 he took, and he made it.
It's just it should happen more. Like, I have confidence in him making catch and shoot 3s. I just don't think the offense needs to come to a standstill so he can do super cool ISOs anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also feel like the more dribbles he takes before the sidestep 3, I actually think the better, that it helps him get in rhythm, especially just anecdotally. I just said that wrong, but you know what word I went for. That when he goes between the legs into it, I think he's better than when it's just a hesitation dribble and then he gathers the ball, as it's in midair, so to speak, and sidesteps and fires it. So I think there's a process that helps produce better results for Tatum when he does it. But yeah, we're all in agreement in terms of the volume of it we'd like to see and how we feel about that shot profile for him overall. The other negative, and I do want to get to some positives here, but the other negative that stood out, of course, is they lost the minutes with Curry on the bench with 5 fouls at the end of the third quarter, that I believe it was 11-4 is what they got outscored by. And so they did go into the final frame leading by double digits, but it was 11 when that was a prime opportunity to put more significant of a cushion, in between them and Golden State.
Yeah. I mean, they did everything they could, as Sam likes to say, to lose this game. They did it
They
all.
they they were like, "Oh, we traded the Golden State pick to the Blazers. Let's make sure that it has as little value as possible. We're going to make sure they get a win tonight. That draft pick spot is going to be affected by us if we have anything to say about it."
It was just frustrating to see them collapse on both ends. It felt like they went away from what was working the whole night. It felt like they slowed. Like I said this when we recapped the game. It felt like obviously when it gets to late in the game, the general idea is slow down the offense, make sure you focus on getting a good shot. That doesn't work for the Celtics. They're not good when they slow down the offense. They need to keep up the pace because that's what it was killing the Warriors all night. The Warriors could not keep up with the Celtics pace. And then they just decided to be like, yeah, no, we'll slow it down. We'll focus on good shots, but they're not good at doing that. And so it failed miserably. And that's when things went downhill. That's when Steph Curry and Klay Thompson were able to get in their rhythm. And that's when the Celtics lost the game. And this is not a game you should have lost, obviously. It was annoying to see. Bobby, you said positives. I'm curious to know what the positives were from your perspective.
Well, so it's more for 36 minutes or almost 36. There were positives. One of my favorite things when it was going well for them is how consistently they would get a defensive rebound and quickly look up ahead. And typically those outlets were going to Jaylen Brown, pushing the pace. And what came of that, what we saw of him as a passer, where he drops it behind him to Derek White for a layup, or they get a good look at a three, they miss, but they have the advantage in terms of positioning. So they get the offensive rebound and it leads to a second chance basket. That was something in particular that stood out and was a nice carryover from how well they played in the 5-game homestand.
You want to get real mad?
Oh, no.
I opened up the box score to be like, I thought this was a good Jalen game. Because I did. I think Jalen has continued his positive play as of late. But I had it open from last night's pod, and I had the fourth quarter box score open. Jaylen Brown only 2 shots in the fourth quarter. Jason Tatum 0 of 4. Not what I would like to see from Tatum. But for the full game, I think we got a pretty good Jalen night. 28 points on 10 of 22. It didn't feel like he was forcing too much. Like you said, his decision making has become much, much better. I also think we had a good Nemi game. I don't think we talked about
I thought that was
Nemi
the best game of the season for him.
Yeah. Double for the man off the bench. Good for him. Even if he's getting his own misses, like, gotta respect it.
Yeah, no, it was a good game. I mean, you almost wish he was good enough for them to keep him on the floor late in the game because he was the key for them. Like, not only not losing the offensive rebounding battle, they were winning it early in the game. Like, they were winning the rebounding game early because Nemi was doing such a good job, but he's just not in tune enough defensively to keep him in those late game spots yet, which is unfortunate because then the Celtics proceeded to get
and he doesn't stretch the floor.
Jackson.
So they're going to go to Horford over him, obviously, but it changes the spacing. I will say though, something that's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but I think was apparent to most people watching, he sets fantastic screens, and that makes everyone better.
It's so good. It's so fun to watch Nemi set screens.
Do you guys think this stretch for Nemi could potentially earn him a slot in the real rotation when Cornette comes back? Because people were talking about it yesterday. I had somebody reply to me on Twitter like, look at this, like, Cornette's out, he's playing well, and like, if he continues to impact the game, like, he was a +10 in this game yesterday. It helps that he was playing against Dario Saric, but like, I don't know, he, like you said, like, good screens, he makes a positive impact. Did he get a block yesterday? No.
I don't think they gave it to him, but he at least deterred the shot at the rim. Like, he's the reason it missed.
He does a pretty decent job at just, like, kind of getting his fingerprints on stuff in a good way. I don't think he's perfect. I don't think he's like solid. Like, he's not better than Horford. He's not going to be your number 1 backup big by any means, but he can give you minutes. He played 20 minutes yesterday and he was fine.
I think he's solid. I still don't think he's better than Luke Cornette quite yet. I still don't think I'd play him consistently over Luke Cornette. I think matchup based, like, I think if Luke was healthy, you'd still probably play him against the Warriors because of the rebounding, because of Kevon Looney and Trace Jackson Davis. But I think overall, Cornette's still a better defender. He's better positionally. He still gives you a little bit more. I think he's probably a better finisher around the rim as well, for what it's worth. I'd still go to Luke Cornette. I do think Nemi has earned more opportunities, especially based on the matchup, though.
Yeah, I think that I agree with those points, but I also see, whereas Luke Cornette is basically, he'll keep the car at 10-2 and go the speed limit and get it where it needs to go just fine. Keita has a chance to get it there faster, if I'm going to stay committed to this analogy. I just think that there's more impact from him in his minutes. That doesn't always mean that he's better, or, it's easy to not appreciate what Kornet brings to the table because it's not flashy, it doesn't pop. But I think there's a real reason to give more of an investment to playing time to Keita. The foul trouble and the issues that Jack brought up are all relevant and real. But I also think that if they can develop him and continue to fine-tune him, knowing that he has a higher ceiling, including from a team contribution standpoint, I think that it's worthwhile to continue to play Keita.
Yeah. I mean, no fouls yesterday, I don't think, right? No. 21 minutes almost with no fouls. Good for him. Big bounce back.
Gotten better this season at it.
Mm. Yeah, you can see it. You can see the progression. At the time of recording this, and by the time it drops, the Celtics will be playing the Kings tonight at 10 p.m. I feel like this has the chance to be a great bounce back game because the Kings are a good team. The Kings, I feel like heading into the season, a lot of people thought the Kings would be the team bouncer in the playoffs. They're like, oh, they're not going to be as healthy this year. All these things. They're 16-9 right now, 4th in the Western Conference. They are 4 games up on the Warriors in the standings. Now it's not the same exactly, however, obviously, but they play a lot like the Pacers in the sense that they play elite offense and defense is questionable, not quite as questionable as the Pacers. But this is a Kings team that is great on offense. It feels like it's a good chance for the Celtics to bounce back. However, if they don't come to play, it's also equally as good of a chance for them to continue the downward spiral, unfortunately. Bobby, what are you looking for in the Kings game?
I don't see how someone could look at this knowing the context and not consider it a huge challenge for the Celtics physically in terms of the quick recovery and the high-octane offense they're about to go against, and then mentally between the loss and the travel and how frequently they've been playing and all of that. And I don't just mean the travel, obviously, from San Francisco to Sacramento, but from East Coast to West Coast, and then to have to go back-to-back. And, yeah, I think this is going to be a huge test for them. We don't know at the moment, is Jason Tatum going to play? We know that Al Horford won't. They get Kristaps Porzingis back. And on that play, Jack, when we were watching it there on film from Tatum at the end of regulation, I'm just thinking about, man, if it's Porzingis in the far corner instead of Horford, with all due respect to Big Al, that I think that pass is more likely to happen and the shot's more likely to go in. And so it's going to be nice to have him back to go up against Sabonis and what Porzingis brings to the offense, but just a huge test in terms of the speed that Sacramento brings to the table and having to deal with that all night long.
First and foremost, big Nemi revenge game energy. Have to take that into account. Also, big prove to me you can get stops game for the Celtics. You mentioned the Celtics, the Kings being one of the top offensive teams in the league, similar to the Pacers. First thing I thought about was all the free makes they gave them in the fourth quarter. Just consecutive basket after basket after basket. Coming off a game like yesterday where you lost because you couldn't get stops, this is a big prove-it game to me. It is a great bounce-back spot for the Celtics. I don't know who's going to play. I just looked to see if the report was out. It's not. But I think Horford's out. Poor guy's tuckered out from shooting all the threes yesterday. I do think having Porzingis yesterday would have impacted some of the things that went wrong. His length would have been sick to have on the glass, and his quick bounce could have helped on that play where Curry was defended by Horford, but the offensive rebound went to Kuminga and Trace Jackson Davis and ultimately to Chris Paul. If he's there, maybe he's able to tip the ball the other way. Who knows? But I'm excited to see him back. I love Porzingis. I think he plays with good energy. I think the team is significantly better when he plays. I think he is the main upgrade that they got this summer, despite Holiday being an all-star level player, a better version of Marcus Smart to a lot of people. I think Porzingis gives them a new dynamic that teams of years past haven't had. I mean, watching yesterday, it felt like you were watching last year's team. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, sorry. I sometimes I can't tell when you're done. I was just like, is there more?
I know. I pause if I feel my
you love yourself a dramatic effect. You love a dramatic pause.
He's from the news industry. He's got that delivery.
I'm still not used to it 3 years later. Yeah, this Kings team, De'Aaron Fox is playing like a top 10 player in the league. He's amazing. I think people are going to be really shocked at just how good De'Aaron Fox is playing.
Well,
Now,
mad.
mad. But fast forward, how many hours? 7 hours from now when he drops like 5 of 17 shooting, and I look like a moron. But De'Aaron Fox is aggressive. He's great. He's shooting very well. I think he's shooting like 45% from deep as of late. So he's been cooking. Domantas Sabonis is an offensive hub. Keegan Murray just made 12 threes in 3 quarters, so get ready to get angry online when he does that. But this is big test for the Celtics defense, particularly like you said, because this is a good Kings team. This is one of the top X teams in the league. Like they're going to be a playoff team again. They're very well coached. They're very good on offense. Celtics need to come to play because regardless of who's available to, whether or not Tatum plays, we don't know. It's a big game, but. Did we miss anything? Did we get it all? Any other thoughts?
A thought I had as we were talking about the defense is that going back to when Sabonis was on the Pacers, the Celtics have struggled to contain him in the short roll. He's consistently gotten that shot and knocked it down against Boston. And then also, obviously, that two-man partnership with Fox consistently gets De'Aaron these open looks off the dribble, coming across the middle of the paint into this fadeaway style jumper. And so, yeah, we're all talking about the defense, and it needs to be much better against the pick and roll than it was in the fourth quarter last night.
Definitely.
For what it's worth, Celtics have won 4 straight over the Kings. 2 straight swept them last year with this iteration of the team after the big hey, they're good movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big game for the Celtics. Big rest of the West Coast trip. You're already 0-1 on the West Coast. Got to flip the script now. Bobby, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think we covered it all and that I've talked enough.
Awesome. Make sure to check out Bobby's work on Inside the Celtics, Sports Illustrated, SI Media Group. Subscribe to How About Them Celtics, and I'll let Sam take it out.
Yes, thank you very much for watching Talking C's, collabed with Inside the Celtics, part of SI Media. Big thanks to Bobby for hanging out with us. We always love chatting with him. You can follow him on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky, and you can read his work as part of Inside the Celtics. You can follow the pod by subscribing to the YouTube page. You can hit the notification bell so you get all the Talking C's, the full-length pods, the game recaps, film breakdowns, rumor breakdowns, and also the pregame streams, which are a half hour before every game. Don't miss tonight's at 9:30. You can also leave a like, leave a comment, tell us what you're thinking about the C's. How do you feel about the Kings game? Whatever it may be. You can also reach out to us via email. hbtcpod@gmail.com is a great way to get in touch with us. We always read the emails on the pods. There will be a new one tomorrow morning. You can find us on socials at How About Them C's. That's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Facebook is just the name of the podcast. All pregame streams are there as well as YouTube. And the pods and game recaps are audio versioned on Spotify and Apple, so follow us there too. You can follow Jack at JackSimoneNBA on Twitter. You can follow me at Sam LaFrance NBA. That's it for us. Bye.